All right. So blockchain is the new black. Why is this the title? Well, I kind of look at all this emerging technology as having its sort of 15 minutes of fame, right? So it was originally, the granddaddy of them all is IoT, right? And then everyone's talking about 5G, everyone's talking about AI, everyone's talking about blockchain. So this isn't just about blockchain, it is about the convergence and all of this technology that is screaming towards us. All right, so we're gonna have a couple of interactive portions. Interactive means play along. What is the first thing you think of when you hear the term blockchain? Yell it out.
Bitcoin.
Exactly. How did I know this? This is really just half the story, because you're not wrong. It's the first thing everybody thinks of, right, is crypto. But I like this quote because I think it describes blockchain in an oblique way. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So we already talked about cryptocurrency, but I think of the blockchain as a digital truth, right? So it is layer upon layer upon layer of data, transactions, contracts. It's really going to be the way we interact with everything in the future and the way we record it. And by using a distributed ledger, it means you're all data experts, right? You understand information. So this is not a centralized information or data store. It's distributed. In theory, tamper-proof. So that's really what we're looking for. Cryptocurrency lives on the blockchain, but blockchain is so much more in terms of what it can do and how it can move us forward, especially around data, right? We're able to record data and then new findings on top of that data. So you can draw a line from where we are today all the way back to the origins, right? You could argue that the mortgage crisis wouldn't have happened if it all lived on the blockchain. Because what happened was these mortgages were sold over and over and over again, and then it was impossible to find out who held the original loan, who was the original lender. We had no way of knowing that. That does not happen on the blockchain. But we're not just going to stop there. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, and I'm not really here to educate you on anything you don't know. What I would like to do is spark some interest, spark conversation, and look at everything that we're doing now in a much broader context. Because technology today, this isn't like, the beginning of mobility or the internet. This is like that times 10, times 100, because there's so much technology. So we're gonna talk a little bit about it. Where are we now? Here's my little technology tree. What's interesting about this is I ran out of branches. There's a lot more technology than this. You could argue that deep learning kind of belongs under artificial intelligence along with machine learning. They're all elements of each other. But all of these technologies are going to blend for the solutions of the future. The other component here that I'd love for all of us to think about is that let's leverage technology not just to do everything we're doing today faster. Because that would be a miss. We have an opportunity now to rethink how we do everything. We can rebuild all of our constructs. We can rebuild how we look at data. We can rebuild how we engage. Social interactions have changed dramatically, for better or for worse, right? Depends, people fall down on either side of this argument. But we socialize in an entirely different way than we used to. So let's take this opportunity and think in broader terms. because we are all now alchemists, right? Technology are ingredients in a broader book of recipes. And it's this convergence of these technologies, right? You're not going to be able to have one technology live in a silo without other technologies helping to enable it. So AI, we talked a lot about this. I saw some great talks yesterday. Igor Trubin, we did a little fireside chat yesterday talking about data, looking at anomalies. People are really afraid of artificial intelligence. Why? Right? We know what could go wrong, but today, at this moment, we're in control of it. So it is up to us to make sure that our lives don't become Black Mirror. Virtual reality. Okay, how many of you have been in a headset before? Like a high-end headset? Oh, that's good. All right, so one thing that wasn't in my bio is that I actually work for HTC Vive, which is the maker of the high-end headset. And I'm not really there to sling hardware. It's not what I care about. What I care about is the software and the solutions and the digital worlds and the opportunity to educate and train and learn things in these virtual environments. So VR is really a destination. So you are going into virtual reality to learn something, do something, be someone, right? Play a game. But it's a fully controlled environment. Unlike augmented reality, right? That is just digital objects in your field of view. Right? Has anybody played Pokemon Go? It's the most rudimentary version of augmented reality. But AR right now lives on our phones mostly. Right? We hold up our phones, we see a digital object. That's not where it's going to go. Wearables are coming. You've probably seen HoloLens, you've probably seen Magic Leap. Apple has announced they're going to come out with a wearable in 2022 and a more powerful one in 2023. So every single thing you're doing on your mobile devices now, you will do with a wearable. It's hard to imagine, but magic wayfarers, right? You'll put on your glasses, and through gesture and voice control, you'll be able to see everything that you see on your mobile devices in your field of view. So I like to say that, at the dinner table, instead of my kids staring at their mobile phones, ignoring me, in the future, they can ignore me by looking right at me. Because their Instagram feed will be here. Latest episode of Black Mirror will be floating over my head. This is progress. So the beauty of virtual reality is you can be anywhere, anytime. The beauty of augmented reality is you can access anything, anytime. So robotics, another thing people are very, very fearful of, right? So there's sort of two elements to robotics that I think about. One of them is the exoskeleton, right? So you sort of think about it as augmenting our physicality. The other piece is where the fear comes in, automation, right? We're going to be taken over by machines. If you're doing a job that is basically just a rote activity over and over, you are going to be replaced by a robot. However, what if we turned the perspective around and said, thank you. Thank you for freeing me of this task, this repetitive task that I am not here to do, right? What are we here to do? What is the beauty of humans over AI and robotics? It's our ability to create. We can create things out of nothing. We can bring together these sort of disparate constructs of information and ideas, and we can pull them together into one. We can create music, we can create art, create literature, we create film. It's going to be very, very hard for us to teach robots using AI. At least certainly not in our lifetime. So autonomous vehicles, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. And I can't remember who said this, but someone said, the amount of data that we have to track, yeah, sure, we can put 2, 3 cars on the road, right? And we can control them, a little kind of, automotive to automotive interaction, exchange of data. But what about 100,000, 200,000, 100 million? How are we going to do that? And spatial computing. So this is sort of this confluence of augmented reality and data being completely accessible, and 5G, which is going to be another enabler. We'll talk about that in a second, right? It's actually everything around us will be some type of information that we can interact with, right? So our digital landscape and our real life are going to seamlessly merge. Natural language processing and gesture. Those are going to be new inputs, right? They all exist sort of individually today. But when we have these wearables, we're not just going to rely on one input the way we do with our phones today, right? We'll talk, and we'll ask, we'll conjure information, right? Using our hands, using our voice. Eventually, we'll just think it and it'll happen. 5G. This is another one that's everyone's talking about. A little bit fearful about what it all means. We're going to have to triple, quadruple the number of towers. So the wavelengths are shorter. But it is what is going to power all of these new experiences. Right? So 5G connections will surpass 1 billion by 2023. This is all coming. So what 5G is and isn't. 5G is not just an evolution of 3G, 4G, right? It is exponentially bigger. But it's going to have to be, because we're moving from this kind of 2D information construct into a 3D landscape. The irony is that we live in 3D, and yet we do almost everything on screens, on 2D screens, including looking at incredibly complex data models. Even physical scans. Doctors are looking at them on a 2D screen, right? So we are really moving towards everything in 3D. And this is just, I wanted to show this slide because this is just one sliver of the market, but media is a huge piece of this, and it's media in all of its forms, including how we communicate. It's not just entertainment and games. But the market size is enormous. So if we can get in front of this problem, this perceived problem of technology taking over our lives, we can leverage it for good. And I'm not trying to be Pollyanna-ish here. It's not just this wide-eyed naivete. I get what can go wrong, right? A lot can go wrong. But I think it's our job to write the story of the future using this technology. So we have to educate ourselves. That's why I'm here to learn from you, right? I need to understand better what you do, what are some of your challenges, and take it back, and then talk to another room full of experts and say, hey, this is what the data and computer and architecture folks, how telcos, this is the challenges that they're having. We need to connect these dots. IoT and the edge, right? Again, this is the architecture that is going to enable all of this information, and it's a two-way street, right? Because we're sending up just as much information as we're pulling down. How many of you have heard of the AR cloud? Someone had yesterday. So the AR cloud is essentially a digital twin of the entire planet. You're welcome for this image. You're going to be thinking about this later. So, you probably heard of digital twins. in factories where they build a digital version of their manufacturing plant so they can train people. This is a digital twin of the entire planet and everything in it. So how does that work? The world will be painted with data. This is a friend of mine who's a Forbes writer, Charlie Fink, wrote an article called this. Highly recommend that you take a look at it. Also, if you want to understand a little bit more about the AR cloud, Wired, Kevin Kelly wrote an article called Mirror World. Phenomenal article. Explains exactly what this is. So it is layers of data, information, essentially hung, right, in physical space. So you'll have the physical world and then the digital world, which is where a lot of our communication will lay. We'll record experiences. You might have digital graffiti artists. So their work is all going to live in the digital world. And there's mobility, right? How we're communicating. Energy and water, health and wellness, communications, entertainment. Right? So all of that data, that digital data, is going to be living and breathing around us all the time. Right? And it's going to be our mobile devices, our wearables, that will help us filter what we want to see. So it's going to follow sort of a network architecture, right? We're going to have a hierarchical structure. We have to explore intent, right? We have to decide what we want to see when, right? Very much like we do now when we're surfing the web, except it's not going to be through a computer interface. It's going to be through our wearables. So, oh, I don't know why that slide's there. Those slides are not supposed to be there. So the AR cloud is quite simply the enabler for our augmented lives, right? So it is the way that we are going to interact with all manner of digital information, digital humans, digital objects. Oops, sorry. And then we're going to move towards virtual worlds. This is a lot further out. Did any of you see Ready Player One? So, and in the book, there's a big component that's missing, which is about education, but we won't go into that today. But we are moving towards these digital worlds, right? So again, why am I telling you all of this? It's because we're racing towards this future. But where exactly are we going? Right? We're rushing and rushing and rushing to get to what end? So again, my point here is let's start to get in front of this and look at all of these issues facing us, not just in our personal lives and our personal work, but really on a global level. This is a big ask, especially in 45 minutes at 11 o'clock in the morning. But I know we can get there. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about a little bit more sort of practical elements around how we do things now and what the opportunity is. So innovation today is like throwing round dice with no numbers. It has been recently brought to my attention that round dice with no numbers are in fact marbles. That is not the point. There's always one in the crowd. But what if we innovate innovation? Right? All right, design thinking. So someone brought this up yesterday as well, design thinking. It's a good construct, right? Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. Perfectly logical. It is one of the many ways we can move forward, especially in our specific industries. But what's wrong with design thinking? Nothing in theory, right? It does work, but it's a set of rules, right? So rigidity stifles creativity. So if we take everything and we funnel it through the same system of rules, are we really innovating? I think we have to dive deeper. And because it's coming, right? The tsunami of technology. So it's our responsibility to write a new story of the future, right? We need to rethink thinking. Okay, interactive piece number 2. What is this? Just shout it out. Anybody else? Anybody else? Shoreline, okay. Anybody else?
Bearing the woods at night.
Very good, okay. All right, it's a cow. Now, anytime you see this image now in the future, what are you going to see?
Bearing the woods at night.
All right, you're already on the right path. But it's very, very hard. Once someone has defined something for you, then that's what it is. Because we're looking for these little truths every day, everywhere we go. And there's a woman, her name is Ellen Langer. I'm going to show you a video from her in a second. She's the first female tenured professor at Harvard in the psych department. She studies mindfulness. And I'm not talking about like kumbaya mindfulness. I'm talking about real mindfulness, being present, being able to understand where you are at any given moment and assessing a situation with fresh eyes. And being able to see this every single time as something other than what we've just defined it as, right? So, I'm gonna play this for you.
All right, what I want you to do is play along with me, because then you'll get a better sense of what I'm going to try to show you. So the first thing is, what is this? Now, those of you who don't see the cow, don't worry. The others only see it because somebody previously told it to them. All right, this is the way the world starts off for us. We have no idea what it is. Then somebody labels it. Now, the problem is that once it's labeled, we're no longer able to see it in any other way. And that's the way we learn about most things, who we are, what we can do, what the world consists of. We can meet back here in 10 years. It'll cost you more bagels, Andrew. And I'll show you the slide again, and you'll see it's impossible not to see the cow. Let's play some more. Add these numbers with me. 1,000, 1,040, 2,040,
Come on, let's hear.
2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090. Okay, now I want to do this one more time. I want you to add 4,090, and to that add 10. Okay. The argument that I'm going to be making and have for the last 40 years is that most of us are mindless virtually all the time. So I don't understand the intern who spoke about soon we may be living with robots. I think that most of us already are. Okay, I'll give you a simpler one. Tell me, how much is 1 and 1? Now, if I start with this, people usually go, oh no, we're gonna have to listen to this for a long time, that it's so ridiculous. But it turns out 1 and 1 is 2 only some of the time. 1 and 1 is 2 if you're using a base 10 number system. If you're using a base 2 number system, 1 and 1 is depicted as 10. Easier to understand. You take 1 watt of chewing gum. You add it to 1 watt of chewing gum. 1 plus 1 is 1. So I want to argue that almost all that we think we know is wrong in at least some context. But we'll go further. Do you know David Copperfield, the famous magician? Okay, what he wants is for you to pick one of these 6 cards. Everybody picked a card? Now, for this to work, you have to look right in his eyes. Okay, and he makes sure he doesn't know you, but he's going to tell you which card you selected. Look, your card is gone. Now, for how many of you is your card gone? Yes, you see, I'll have to talk later to the rest of you who wouldn't raise your hands. And the reason for that is every card is different.
So the reason I love her studies, and it's all science-based, and again, she's got a lot of videos out there, and she's written some amazing papers, so again, I think she's someone that is worth looking at. But it's again, we have to learn how to get unstuck in the way we think. And a lot of times when I'm with groups like this who have a really specific set of skills and are focused on a really, and it's, everything that you are doing is incredibly difficult and focused and requires a lot of energy to do just what you have to do on a day-to-day basis. And here I am just swanning right up here saying, oh, by the way, you need to learn about all this other stuff and then figure out how it's going to impact not just what you do, but the entire planet for the rest of time. It seems fair. But if we start to practice mindfulness in the way that a lot of scientists now are starting to suggest, it actually becomes easy. And the reason I bring up Ready Player One and the fact that they missed the whole education piece is that learning in a virtual environment, in a world of discovery and exploration, will help us in the future get back to this sort of volumetric thinking instead of this linear path that we have all been taught and now we're all on. But the opportunity is broad, and this is why I put this slide up, because it's all positive, right? This is the road to everywhere. So I'm going to talk about some practical things that I'm doing with virtual technology and immersive technologies and ways that we're combining all of these technologies. So in training and education, we're taking actual scenarios. We're putting them in a virtual environment. We're training people in those environments. And we're taking that real-time feedback, right? We're pulling all kinds of data out of those virtual environments. We're taking that data, we're running it through an AI layer. That first pass will tell us the efficacy of the learning outcomes. But as we aggregate more and more data and we put more and more people through these scenarios, we can start to really build true adaptive learning constructs. Right? Some of us have linear intelligence, some of us have visual intelligence, some of us have spatial intelligence, as is recognized by the way some of you parallel park. But we all learn in vastly different ways. And yet, our entire educational system is set up to service one type of learner, with a few, I'll use some terminology, anomalies here and there. Right? But this is where we get to learning how to learn. Second example, I think is also very relevant. Real-time diagnostics using AR glasses. In a data center, for example, we work with a lot of data center clients. Mission critical, very, very important to be able to see live issues. Right? In a data center, you've got servers that are dropping out, you've got capacity issues, redundancies, way off, right? But being able to visualize and have that data, right? And have data in front of a field tech who can then immediately assess the problem and fix it, right? So these are some practical elements. I'm going very broad, now I'm coming back. The last one I'm going to show is digital healthcare. I'm talking about all these different types of data that we're going to be collecting that we're going to be responsible for. So we're wearing great data collectors now. It's only going to get better. We have digital therapeutics coming. The first digital pill was approved by the FDA, I think it was December 2017, really just to measure compliance, right? So we know that people are taking their medication. It's going to be much broader than that, right? That capability is going to allow us to monitor our bodily systems. Right? And think about how much data we'll be looking at. And we need to be able to take responsibility for that. It's a big responsibility for anyone. So I would urge us to think bigger. Because IoT is no longer IoT, it's IoE. It is the Internet of everything. Big data is no longer big data. It is massive data. So now I'm going to say think smaller. And when I say volumetric thinking and what our value is as humans in this automated landscape, this landscape of information, it is our ability to connect disparate pieces of information. So I'm going to show you 4 companies that I work with, and there's hundreds more behind these, right? These are not the 4 gilded companies. But they're all working on a particular piece of this puzzle of the technology of the future. But they're all sort of inextricably linked. And I think it's our job now to look at this and look at what your specialty is and see how you can leverage some of the tech that they're using and that they're building. Right? It's not all about the big 6, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Intels, the Dells of this world, right? It's bigger than this. All right, so 6D AI. This is a company, they're working on the AR cloud. They're focused on gaming right now. So basically they build mobile meshes, right? You can take your mobile phone, you can scan a room, it will build a mesh. Then you can drop in digital objects so that they will behave the way they would in real life, right? So you have persistence and occlusion. So if I put an object here and I take my phone somewhere else and I come back, it'll still be there. If it falls off the table, it'll bounce. Right? If it goes behind the desk, there's occlusion. Right? So this is one small element of the AR cloud. Now imagine you've got everybody, right? When you shop on Amazon now, you can scan your room and you can drop that object in. Imagine now everybody is uploading that data. That's how we start to get the AR cloud, how we build it from the ground up. It's essentially crowdsourced data, some of it. So the next company, GeoNetwork. So they're actually based here in Vegas. So they have a block of IPv6, and they're using network protocols to basically map, so they've mapped the entire globe, right? So every single point on the globe has an IP address, right, that fixes it to a location. And then they can append all manner of data onto that IP address, which can dictate mobile behaviors, right, that is then tied to a place. So as we build out this AR cloud, we now have the location piece, which is important, right? We forget about that, but it has to be tied to a place on the globe. So in this room, in the next decade, there might be 500,000 pieces of digital information here, ranging from artwork to somebody's remembered experience to BIM data, building information management data, right? All of that will live here and be accessible. And so this is one of the companies that's enabling that data to live here and to be called up using existing network protocols. Does anybody have a headache yet? So, in this company, I don't know why their logo is not up here. They're called AI, A-E-Y-E, and they use a version of LiDAR, right? So LiDAR, light detection and ranging, it's one of the primary technologies that ideally is going to keep autonomous vehicles from crashing into each other. They use intelligent detection and ranging, IDAR. So it's LiDAR plus video plus AI. And the reason that their company and how they sort of differ from other autonomous vehicle tech is that they are using AI, artificial intelligence, to replicate the way the eye sees. Because the way the eye sees is we take in data. First, we have sort of foveated field of view, right? So we've got our peripheral vision. But what's in focus, we detect what the important information is in a scene. And we discard the rest of that data dynamically, right? This is how our brains work. So they're doing something similar. They are looking specifically for anomalies. And they're testing against the AR cloud, because the AR cloud will have all physical structures. So anything that is immobile, so buildings and streets, that's easy. So they're going to throw that away immediately. Then there are things that are semi-fixed. There's a stop sign that was like this yesterday. It's like this today. Sorry, officer, I don't know what happened. So that data that they're throwing away can be used at regular intervals to true up the AR cloud. While the data that they're focused on is the safety metric. They're looking for that child that's crossing the road, or someone doing this, not paying attention, which is all of us. Right? So these are all linked. And yet they're independent companies. And nobody's focused on this level of breadth because it's impossible. But in the same way, it seems impossible to build a digital twin of the entire planet. Not only are we doing it, but we're crowdsourcing it. So we need to crowdsource our own brilliance to this end. I'm going to keep asking this favor of all of you. And the last one is called Crucible. They're building what's called human-centric identity, right? So this is bringing us back to the blockchain. So we complain a lot about our data going to Facebook and going to Google. We gave it to them. We have no idea how difficult it's going to be to manage our own personal data. So what they're doing, and a number of other people, and I don't know who's going to win, but whoever does, it's going to be a it will be an actual legitimate unicorn. Because someone needs to build the interface for us to manage our data so that we have permissions levers, right? So we're going to have our avatars, right? They're our digital representation, much like single sign-on. They'll represent us in the digital landscape. And we'll have our public persona, which is very much like the information we put on social media today on Facebook, our fabulous pretend Facebook Lives and Instagram. And then we'll have our private persona, right, with all of our healthcare, our financial records, and those will have levers. So instead of companies being responsible for our data, which in the future is going to be that much more difficult, we can be responsible. We can release that data when they need it, and we can take it back when they don't. Yes, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to have to ramble now. But if you start to think of a peer-to-peer economy, right, related to this, and how those interactions are on a personal level. I own my data. I'm going to share my data with you, and we're going to decide the value of that between us. All right, so we are here now. Art imitates life, life imitates art. So I'm going to be quick. We are headed towards Black Mirror because we believe that's the case, right? We believe in doom and gloom, but it's not. We can collectively change the trajectory. So let's look at the markers of how we interact now. We are all living out loud. Everything is shared. So the whole notion of privacy has changed. We are impatient. We want it now. We want information and data. We want it now. We are always on. So why is this important? Because this is not the future. This is already here. That went down the wrong way. Everything I've talked about today exists, except my former voice. So we need to imagine. I think I just inhaled helium. I know. Imagine how we will live tomorrow. I tried to say that with some gravitas with a helium voice. So we need to think about what is the future. What is the future of work, play, education, entertainment, identity, value, commerce, data, security? What is the future of us? I know this is a big ask. No one was asking for the iPhone. So we all need to be Steve Jobs of the future and deliver a future we don't even know we want yet. The future is superhuman. So let's get practical. A whole new realm of unstructured data is upon us. We need to think in 3D. We need to leverage the z-axis. We can visualize large data sets in virtual environments. We can interact with this data organically. We can work with data from the inside out. The recipe, live outside the org. What does that mean? That means go outside what your companies have been doing for the last however many years and think more broadly. Rethink thinking. What haven't we imagined? Collaborate and inspire. Find people who are not in your discipline. We work a lot together, right? You all seem to know each other. You work together. But now it's time to work with other disciplines. Understand want versus need. And work backwards from the future. Start at your destination, which is how do we want to live and work and play and socialize in the future? And then come back and use all of this technology to write that story. And with a little bit of luck, everybody wins. So I'm asking of all of you, get in the game. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Peter Drucker. And don't forget to think outside the cow. Thank you very much.